Okay. So maybe I've seen a question pop up about value and benefits. Um, I thought it was good at this moment to get a slightly different perspective of what big is. We've heard about strategy and governance, but we have a couple of panelists who can maybe chip in and give their perspective as to how this is relevant to projects and programs, and as well as product management and creation of value. Chris and Pam, what do you think?
Is Chris ready?
No,
I don't see Chris.
go ahead, Pam.
All right, fine. It struck me as Andre was going through all the components, how often you start a project or you start a product, and you simply are working in a void. You really don't understand exactly what it is the company is seeking to achieve. Maybe you've said, oh, we're going to sell this many $1 million or do whatever it is, but it would be so much more helpful if you actually had a better target from the strategic perspective that was filtering down into the product perspective. I think there's one other piece that kind of struck me when I was looking at this, which is if you have communication, then we talk about it. I think the assumption in a way is kind of it's all top down. But the reality is some of these mechanisms, such as OKRs, allow you, in fact, to turn around and flip it back and say, well, this is what we're learning. This is what we're gonna feed back. I also want to make one more comment, and this has to do with change versus BAU, et cetera, which we kind of skipped over earlier on, David. So I'm just going to drag it back at this point, which is as a product person, very often we could be in an area which is business as usual. I remember once having 200 and some odd different products, which was 25% of the company revenue, but nothing was really changing. Right? My job was just to manage these products. On the other hand, you can have occasionally products which you start up from literally scratch. You think you're going to do this from scratch. And then you have ones which I think are the bulk of most people's product lines, where you're basically trying to kind of modify the product as you go along. And so being able to refer to what your the items that Andre talked about, you can basically say, okay, this is who's accountable. This is what we're trying to achieve. This is why we're spending this money. I think all of that reporting back and explaining the value that you're producing is really important. And I think half the time, most of the things that Andre talked about in the previous slide, you maybe get 50% if you're really lucky. That's my perspective. Love to hear everybody else's thoughts. Chris?
Thank you, Pam. Yes, and I think you're quite right that 50% may be optimistic. And usually it's in one leg you might find quite solid governance and a good understanding of strategic fit, etc. And another part of the organization is absolutely none. And I think just coming back to projects and maybe reiterating something from what Martin was saying earlier, I see two key areas in this project portfolio management area where integrated governance is critical. We've got standard governance within projects, etc. And for the meantime, I'm not really talking about that. What I'm talking about is the 2 points where we integrate it. And one of those is when we're initiating a project, why are we doing this project? What is the purpose of the project? And one of the key functions of governance is making sure that the organization and the way it works, the way it takes decisions, are actually supporting the purpose of the organization. And so when we have integrated governance, we can make sure that every project, including products, start with embedded in the right purpose. And why are we doing this? That everybody is clear why are we doing this, and that the decision-making frameworks, whether it's a sponsor or steering committee, whoever it is, are actually in sync and in tune with that broader picture of organizational purpose, and are given the necessary data and information when they need to make decisions, that they have that data available and that it includes that broader perspective, to take that into account when they're making project portfolio decisions. So that keeps our projects in the right direction as things change. The other end, which is extremely important, the other one, is that how do we make sure that the business as usual operations are ready to take on the outcomes from those projects, the products from those projects, and take those benefits and derive value from them, actually realize value from them. And this is a key part where integrated governance can make sure that we are keeping all the relevant parts of the operation, business as usual operations, in sync with what's happening with products being developed and projects being pushed through, to make sure that those parts of the operation that are going to be responsible for delivering value from these projects are in fact ready to do so, and that stakeholders there have been in sync all the way through and understand that decisions made on the projects were made to ensure that it's easier for them to realize value and achieve the purpose of the organization. So the integrated governance, from my perspective, is to make sure that there's a real end-to-end connection with projects and products as well with the organization, that makes sure that we keep everybody in sync with the same purpose, the same strategy.
I want to come back because we're having kind of this agile conversation in the sidebar, and it's not showing up on Slido, but I really want to bring it back to it. Ashok, I'm going to call somebody out. Ashok is talking a lot about when you complete a project and Agile not having anything to say in the middle of a project. One of the interesting things I was just thinking about while you were talking there was being part of the business as usual, but not really being informed that I was part of the business as usual. And so I think, Chris, part of the other conversation is making sure that everybody knows what their position is on the field, right? If I'm playing defense, I should know I'm playing defense. The organization should be very clear as to who's playing defense and who's playing offense, one. Those people who may be on offense, okay, and they're trying to deliver something new, for example, I don't think, I'm sort of visually putting in a football game here and watching the ball fly across the field. You know, you think that one way forward is going to work, but the reality is, as you learn, you may decide there's a different way to actually take something across the line. And so I think the agile mindset, the curiosity mindset, allows you to get partway through and really keep evaluating whether you're making progress. I think there's something, and I'm going to add to that, which is if we structure our projects so we only deliver value at the end, in a way that's a failure mode. I believe that we have to structure every single project so we can see these interim steps, so that we can make sure that the governance and everything else, that we are actually making progress towards it, as opposed to the big bang, we get to the end and it's done. Now, that said, I come much more from a smaller project perspective, and I can understand there are people here who've worked on, you know, nuclear power plants. Fair enough, we can't deliver part of a nuclear power plant, but we should actually know what the interim value is for most things that we are doing. And I'd love to hear other people's perspective on delivering interim value and then how that fits into big from their perspective.
Yeah. Pam, I think that's right. And I think I would add that I think we need to be careful of the word agile here and use agility with a small a instead.
Yep.
I think project management has always been about being adaptive and always will be. And it doesn't really matter what particular method you're using. And that means, and I think the other aspect is, I spoke a bit about purpose, but the accountability aspect of integrated governance is equally important. And we're not just accountable as someone working on a project, like a project manager, or a sponsor, or a team member. I'm not just accountable for making sure that this project finishes, for example, on budget and on time. I'm responsible for making sure this actually delivers on the purpose of this project, the value that it's going to have. And to do that, I must keep talking to all the other players on the field. So if I'm seen as defense, and I have to be talking to offense, otherwise we're not going to achieve our ends properly. So integrated governance is very much about making sure that all of these players are kept in sync and that they are actually collaborating and working together. And it helps when we're all working in a mode where we're fighting fires, etc., etc. This integrated governance helps to make sure that we retain and we're very clear about what it is we're accountable for, and we're also very clear about who else we need to support and what other purposes we need to support within that project.
Indeed. Guys, we sorry,
Thanks.
Chris.
You're dragging us to the end here, I think, David.
Yeah, just one thing to plant with people before we. I'm not going to stop now, but we need to think about strategy delivery and whether it's not just about projects and programs or products, is it? We have to perform to deliver strategy. But I'll move on from that because. But thank you guys.